The Second Amendment is something that is important to the freedom that we enjoy here in America. So many countries around the world don't have the right to bear arms, and what we've seen is an gradual increase in ratcheting down of Americans' freedom to defend themselves. There hasn't been this all-out gun grab, and that's how the mainstream media and the establishment criticizes people in the conservative movement. As they say, well, nobody's coming to get your guns. These people keep warning us about a big gun grab, but that's because the methods that they've used, not just in cracking down on the Second Amendment, but energy independence. It's the way that they're taking over industries and regulating them. They use regulations and they use policy. It's like Edward Snowden talked about. It's not about law, it's about policy. And until policy changes, we're not going to see any real change here in America. And so when we talk about the fight, this war on the Second Amendment, we're talking about subversive methods that the government and this administration, appointees within this administration, cabinet level people, are using to regulate the gun industry. And one of those ways is the massive purchase of hollow point and just every caliber ammunition. And we've seen this during Obama's administration, an unprecedented amount of ammunition buying. And so I'm going to go to this video right now by Infowars.com, government secretly stockpiling munitions for a domestic war.
But since April 2012, he's got the spreadsheet from FedBiz Ops, 2.11 billion. They just keep saying 1.6. I say it's over 3 billion, but Kit broke it down. 2.11 billion. So 2,100+ plus million. Rounds of ammo, not including blanks. War in Iraq used an estimate 66 million rounds a year, or 5.5 million per month times 12. Feds have bought enough ammo that we know of to wage a 32-year war in Iraq, or more likely here in the U.S., and we're going to add to that, no, we know, and you can link to it, they're training to take the American people on. I mean, think about that. And it's not if it's true, it is true. That the government, like it's Manhattan Project times 10. I mean, it is just tens of billions a month we know of. Is just hardening everything, digging in, training to fight the 3%ers, the gun owners, the veterans. What do they have planned so horrible that the people will fight back? Because the one plan's been do the tyranny so incremental that we just kind of put up with. But now it's getting so crazy. What are they planning? They're going to come after the Patriots. They're going to start it. After the federal buildings were hit today and a shopping mall by the 3% group, it'll be like that. We were able to take out the leadership of the group hours after they killed hundreds at each facility. They did it, they said, for Alex Jones. You've seen all the other newscasts. They did it, they said, because he told them. And you'll hear, well, we took out the terrorist leader, Jones, on his way to work. He claimed he was against violence, but we all know the truth. Yes. Ron Paul was also involved. I mean, I'm telling you, folks, that's whenever they blow something up, who do they blame? Whenever the cops get shot, who do they blame? Me. You think that's a power trip they do that? You think it's fun to have these killers looking at me? Well, just gives me energy. I just know I'm whistling past the graveyard, whatever's got to be done. Do other people have the nerve to go up against these folks? Because let me tell you something. It isn't nerve to go up against them. They're already here. They're going to get all of our innocence. They're going to keep hurting children and babies. You just think about all those kids they've aborted, all the little kids they're kidnapping, and all the sex rings, and all the Satanism, and then ask if you care about your life. Of course you don't. And that's what being Christ-like is. Not that I'm Christ-like in many ways. I'm very worldly, and I'm evil. That's why God has used me and many others who were evil, like Saul of Tarsus and many others. God isn't looking like William Blake said for a bunch of wimps. God's looking for men that are willing to take out these evil people.
We're talking about a huge amount of ammunition, and this is not full metal jackets. They tried to say that it was for target practice and that it was a normal purchase. No, these are hollow point rounds that are banned for use in war, but they can be used domestically. And so, I mean, there was speculation that they're buying this ammunition to use against the American people. But what we saw in the wake of it was a huge spike in the price of ammunition. And then now we have the ATF reclassifying wetted down nitrocellulose as high explosives, and so creating all of this extra red tape for the industry. Undoubtedly, unless they fully retract this imposition of regulation on the industry, it's definitely going to result in an increase in the price of ammunition and the accessibility of ammunition, and could even shut down large portions of the industry. Companies that can't afford to comply with this, because you have to have special licensing to drive with this stuff. If it's rated as explosives, you have to store it in facilities that meet the requirements and are hardened and able to withstand an explosion. There's all kinds of fallout that's going to happen, and so the industry was in turmoil after this newsletter came out, and so the ATF sent out another letter, basically, pulling back, saying that they're going to work with the industry, and that here, I'll just read a little bit of it. It says, subsequent contact from industry members who import, transport, store, and employ wetted nitrocellulose in the production of ammunition, however, has brought to our attention issues that were not fully addressed in the newsletter and require further consultation and consideration with the industry. So accordingly, the ATF has and will conduct further industry outreach concerning wetted nitrocellulose. In the interim, previously authorized industry practices concerning wetted nitrocellulose will continue, will not be affected. So they're saying that they're going to back off, but what sparked this desire to go after the transport and delivery of nitrocellulose? Why are they targeting it, and for what reason? There's no justification. There hasn't been any disasters or explosions that would justify this change in policy. No, what this is a policy that's being pushed from the administration. It's a way for them to backdoor the crackdown on ammunition, in the same way that buying billions of rounds of hollow point and multiple different calibers, the same kind of impact you would see from that. And it's not just the gun industry that they're going after. We're talking about our energy industry. They're cracking down. The EPA is going after coal and natural gas plants and shutting them down across the country. And it was Obama who said that you can open a coal plant, but we'll bankrupt you. So let's play a clip from Obama where he talks about his policy towards the energy industry in America.
But this notion of no coal, I think, is an illusion, because the fact of the matter is that right now we are getting a lot of our energy from coal, and China is building a coal-powered plant once a week. So what we have to do then is we have to figure out how can we use coal without emitting greenhouse gases and carbon, and how can we sequester that carbon and capture it. If we can't, then we're going to still be working on alternatives, but let me sort of describe my overall policy. I mean, what I've said is that we would put a cap and trade system in place that is as aggressive, if not more aggressive, than anybody else's out there. I was the first to call for 100% auction on the cap and trade system, which means that every unit of carbon or greenhouse gases was emitted would be charged to the polluter. That will create a market in which whatever technologies are out there that are being presented, whatever power plants that are being built, that they would have to meet the rigors of that market and the ratcheted down caps that are imposed every year. So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted. That will also...
All right, so what Obama's saying here is that he's going to go after the industry with carbon credits. And they're never up front with the motives of what their policy is. It's, you can operate in our economy, but we're going to bankrupt you with all of the regulations, taxes, and meanwhile, he admits that these burdens that they're placing on the industry here in the United States are not affecting China. So China is opening a plant every month or something, but they're going to come after our coal plants. We have some of the cleanest coal plants in the world, but we're the ones being targeted with all these carbon credits, and not just us, but the West, Germany, the UK, Australia. So they're shutting down industry in the West and moving it to the third world so that they can bring our economy down and better control us. And that's what it's all about. It's about control, and it's about taking over our economies. And Obama doesn't care if he can't get the votes in Congress to implement his policies. He's shown over and over again that he'll pass executive orders and use his office as a dictatorship. He even said, I have a pen and I got a phone.
I've got a pen and I've got a phone. And I can use that pen to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions that move the ball forward in helping to make sure our kids are getting the best education possible, making sure that...
Yeah, so this idea that he doesn't have to go and to the American people, and we don't need to wait for democracy, but he's going to operate outside of it. It's against everything that this country stands for, and it flies in the face of all of the promises he made running for president, when he said that the people would get all this time to read the bills before that he would pass them, that they would be a transparent administration. No, they're not. Obama's not. He's had the least transparent administration. He goes after whistleblowers. They're targeting people within the media. They're going after whole industries in the United States subversively by implementing draconian policies, and we're left to go and find out what's going on after this policy's already been put out. The ATF didn't even bother to inform the industry that it was going to make this change. It was just a newsletter that went out. It wasn't, people weren't informed. There was no discussion. Like they said in their addendum, they realized that there were considerations that hadn't been made, and they hadn't bothered talking to people within the industry about the fallout or the effects of this policy change. And I think it's because these policies are being put in from the top down. They get a letter from the executive branch or some cabinet member, and they put out their little newsletter without even no democratic process at all. If we don't elect somebody who represents the American people, the next president is going to use this same method and inherit all these powers from Obama. He's setting a precedent as president of the United States that he doesn't need to go to the American people or go to Congress to vote on military action, to vote on new policy regarding these industries. And our economy is suffering for it. The price of energy is going up. Our gross domestic product is suffering. It's at an all-time low, and the continued attack on the American middle class will continue under a Hillary Clinton presidency. She's even promised to increase taxes on the middle class. So I think we have a clear choice here between Obama's administration and their policy of attacking American industry, and a Donald Trump presidency that is promising to bring jobs and bring manufacturing back to our country and ending this false song of globalism. Let's just go to this clip real quick and listen to what Hillary Clinton has to say about raising taxes on the middle class.
Trump wants to cut taxes for the super rich. Well, we're not going there, my friends. I'm telling you right now, we're going to write fairer rules for the middle class, and we are going to raise taxes on the middle class.
So what she's saying, Trump wants to cut taxes on the super rich. But then in the next sentence, she's saying, we're going to raise taxes on the middle class. And these people are cheering. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, I forget where the quote is, but something to the extent that when democracy dies, it'll be to the sound of applause and cheering. I guess that's how democracy dies, to the sound of all these useful idiots that think that they're going to get a handout when the government comes and shuts down industry, shuts down small businesses. Where do you think you're going to get a job? Is everybody going to work for the federal government? It's just not going to work. I mean, we need to reject this socialism. It's Russia now who's lived under the oppression of a communist state that is out fighting ISIS. Meanwhile, our government is giving them weapons. And I think InfoWars is right. They're saying that Obama's going to crash the economy, or that maybe if Donald Trump gets in, they'll crash it right after he gets elected. I just want to go to this clip real quick. John Bound is talking about the way that Obama's going after our industries.
The panicked elite are buying up underground bunkers and or fleeing to parts unknown, as all indications point towards a collapse that will, in the words of economist Peter Schiff, be the earthquake that follows the 2008 tremor. The Chicago Tribune reported that about 3,000 individuals with net assets of $1 million or more left Chicago in the last year alone due to the exploding climate of unrest growing in the Union stockyards. The writing is on the wall. President Obama, in concert with his puppet master George Soros, have been turning up the heat on deteriorating conditions resulting from the United States and the EU's strategic collapse of the global economy for the last 7 years.
So if somebody wants to build a coal power plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
Before Obama ever came around, coal was doing good. Obama killed it.
We have citizens digging through the trash just to eat.
I wish he'd just step off the face of the earth. It wouldn't hurt my feelings none.
What's actually hurt coal is not any EPA rules as much as it is really cheap natural gas that has come from fracking.
They're fracking with such corrupt practices across the United States that the well water is catching on fire. Whoa. Soros signals Argentina's shale is biggest place to be. Soros doubled his stake in state-owned oil company in Argentina, while for the last 7 years spending tens of millions of dollars to lobby to shut down shale production in the U.S. by wildcat small companies. And I'm not saying shale fracking is good overall. I'm not saying there aren't problems, but most of it's financed by Soros and Saudi Arabia, who don't want us to have our own oil. So a coal plant in Mexico that's totally dirty is okay, but a coal plant in Texas that's clean is not okay.
And most of these frackers and oil sands people can't break even unless oil's over $80 or at least over $55.
That's right.
I think it's 10 to 20 in the next several years. So this is what they're doing is they're pumping their existing wells to the max to create cash flow, because their wells it's not expensive to pump, it's expensive to find the darn things and drill. And they were only able to do that with the cheapest junk bonds in history because of quantitative easing and artificial stimulus and high oil price. So that's the next thing to hit the United States.
The Wall Street Journal reports that the largest coal company in the United States has filed for bankruptcy, an event that will result in energy costs that will sharply rise on the American middle class like they have on the common people of Germany. Germany's energy policies have gradually doubled the average industrial cost per kilowatt hour, as clean and renewable energy can't carry the load, literally. Last week, Obama began pushing for housing lenders to offer home loans to people with bad credit. What better way to push the economy over the edge than to repeat the same 2008 nightmare?
We're using data on housing and neighborhood conditions to help cities identify the areas that need the most help.
By 2014, investors had already begun to notice another government-fed subprime housing bubble on the horizon. Investors Business Daily wrote in January of 2014, what stoked housing inflation was federal housing policies designed to boost home ownership among low-income and minority borrowers. Between 2011 and the third quarter of 2013, housing prices rose nearly 6%, triple the increase in rental costs. Both this bubble and the last one were caused by the government's housing policies. Low down payments, a mere 5% at Fannie and Freddie, and just 3.5% at the FHA, are fueling the bubble. But new qualified mortgage rules don't require a minimum down payment for borrowers in 2014. The country has been misled about financial reform. InfoWars has called for Obama's impeachment on numerous occasions, to no avail. His supposed lame duck presidency heading into the end of his term has been tremendously underestimated. Americans are nothing less than under a full New World Order attack, aided and abetted by the executive branch of the United States of America. John Bound for Infowars.com.
Like John Bound is pointing out, this so-called lame duck presidency, this last term, he's got, 68 days left in office now. But he's still pushing for major policy changes, major treaties like the Trans-Pacific Partnership that represent so-called free trade. It's not free trade. The TPP, just like NAFTA, is another way for them to take away Americans' sovereignty and to bypass our democratic process, because they'll be able to pass laws without going to Congress. And so instead of Hillary Clinton or Obama having to go to to Congress for a vote or trying to pass some executive order, policy can be instituted by this group that's unelected and is unaccountable to the American people, and it's going to instead represent international industries that it's going to be contrary to the best interest of the United States. So when the American people or the people of Australia or the people of Germany try to pass a law labeling GMOs or penalizing an industry that continues to put people's health and safety at risk, they're going to be sued or penalized by this partnership. So it's basically putting corporations above people, And it doesn't. It's common sense if you look at the fact that our politicians like Obama and Hillary Clinton are receiving millions of dollars from Wall Street and from special interests. It makes sense that they would be representing those interests and not the American people. And that's the problem at the end of the day, is that Obama is representing special interests. He's sold out, just like Hillary Clinton sold out, and Gary Johnson is sold out. They'll do anything they're told to do as long as they keep getting their big donations, as long as they get more power. And it's the United Nations. If you look at the United Nations headquarters, they have the big statue of the gun or revolver tied in a knot. And there's a statement that says that from the United Nations, I believe, saying that the civilian ownership of firearms threatens the legitimate power monopoly of the state. And so the push for gun control is not an Obama thing. It's not isolated to this administration. This is a policy that we've seen pushed all around the world. And they use events, they capitalize on tragedy in order to enslave the people and get them to give up their rights, give up their freedom. Meanwhile, people like Obama, people like Hillary Clinton are surrounded by bodyguards and don't live in the same reality, don't live in the same world that we do. They don't have to give up their security in order to provide some kind of fake safety for the community. It's not, when you give up your right to defend yourself, it's like declawing a cat. That's what they're basically doing to us. They're declawing us. And it makes the animal unable to defend itself. They become a house cat, and they're trying to turn America into a house cat. And meanwhile, letting people letting unvetted militants from Syria, they're really from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Iraq, Afghanistan, into our country that want to kill us. Letting people in from Central and South America that don't respect our laws. And they're not going to give up their weapons. And so this is a huge threat to Americans' way of life. And I think the major issues we face in 2016 is their policy issues, their principles. And we should not be voting for a candidate based on their party, but based on their policy. Donald Trump is pro-Second Amendment. Donald Trump is against these sovereignty-destroying international treaties like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Donald Trump has stated over and over again that he's going to bring manufacturing and jobs back to this country by removing all this red tape and making it profitable and easier for businesses to function and to exist in our national economy. At the end of the day, it's about making it easier for America to succeed. And you don't do that by bankrupting an industry with taxation and regulation on the production of carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is it's at a low point in the history of the world. I think it's 500 parts per million right now. If you go back and look at the Cambrian period, when there was this explosion, the biggest explosion of life on Earth, carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere were somewhere in excess of 2,000 parts per million. Carbon dioxide is an essential part of plant growth and plant life on this earth. And if you go and look at plant science and greenhouses, a lot of times carbon dioxide is introduced, it's pumped into greenhouses to encourage and to increase plant development and the growth of fruit. It's not a poison. It's a minute. It's in minute levels in the atmosphere, and it's essential for life on this earth. Carbon dioxide, oxygen, sunlight, water. They're the essential building blocks of life. And these industries that are being targeted, it's not because they care about the environment. It's because they want control. It's because they want to generate revenue for this global government.